This is the most important part of the coaching day as well, because we've got these numbers. We've got them all laid out in front of us. How do we use them? Well, now every single minute of your training can be set to a certain percentage of those numbers, of those thresholds. This means that you have an exact number to hit or number to stick to for every single session that you do. And that makes every single session as effective as possible. And these numbers will increase over time, but basically you're never going to start a session again without knowing what numbers to be at. And you'll never finish a session without reviewing whether you stuck to those numbers. And like you said, Dad, it's like having a coach with you 24/7. And we'll use these numbers to improve different parts of your fitness and your physiology. So a sub-threshold session has a different goal to a VO2 max session. And so let's go through those goals, because every session has its own goal and purpose. And this is the beauty of having these numbers, that if you are doing a sub-threshold session, the purpose of that session is to train you at holding a sustained effort, below that FTP number, like you were talking about, Dad. Whereas a VO2 max session is a high intensity session designed to push your body beyond the limits of what it's used to, designed to increase your ability to hold high sustained power. And this creates a physiological adaptation that allows you to increase your threshold number. So every session hits your body in a different way, all aimed at increasing your threshold. But now that we have these numbers, a sub-threshold session is hitting completely different numbers to a VO2 max session. And it begs the question, how could you possibly do a proper sub-threshold session without power? How could you possibly do a VO2 max session without power? How could you do a proper recovery ride without power? Well, you couldn't, because you haven't tested properly. So if you're ever trying to do these sessions without power, without baseline testing, then you're most likely doing them wrong.
Yeah, and that hits the nail on the head when you think about it like that. You don't want to train the same way every day. And, you might have good intentions of today's going to be easy, today's going to be a little bit harder, today's going to be very hard, if that's the terminology you're training to each day. Whereas we're specific, we're saying today's going to be recovery and it should be at this intensity. Today's going to be VO2 and it should be at this intensity. Today's going to be sub-threshold and it's going to be at this intensity. And because we have the baseline FTP number, we can plot that quite easily into our training program, and away we go, training exactly in the right ranges for the outcome and the purpose of every session. And come race day, we want to race at this intensity, which, depending on the event, Ironman, 70.3, sprint or Olympic, they all determine different intensity levels. So we just input our number in our range and away we go and race to that number. And it's stopping us from going too hard in training or in racing. And that is the reason, the most important reason why we want to actually have a number to train and race at. And without that number, we are at best guessing.
And that is the biggest benefit, is all about getting to race day in a better position. And we tell the great story of a athlete who signed up to TriVelo and they had a race in 2 weeks' time. And so obviously we weren't going to help them train and get better in 2 weeks, because it's probably not physiologically going to be that beneficial. But this athlete, instead, you decided to get them some baseline testing so that they had some numbers to stick to in the race. And this specific athlete had done the Noosa Triathlon 3 years in a row prior to this, and done the exact same time 3 years in a row within 5 minutes or so. And then just from doing the baseline testing and getting their numbers to stick to and knowing what numbers to stick to in the race, they did a 20-minute PB that next year because they had an actual plan to stick to and numbers to stick to. And that is the biggest benefit, and that's what we want to see. And that's just without even training better. Imagine if you combined training better to your numbers plus knowing what numbers to stick to in a race. And I guess that's our big benefit for this, isn't it, Dad? You don't have to turn up to the start line of races and wonder how the day is going to go. You don't have to be nervous about blowing up or nervous about not finishing when you have these numbers.
The only thing you need to be nervous about is, will I execute the way I should? And that's all you should be concentrating on, because you've already got your race plan, you've already got your numbers, you've got all your data, you understand how to train to it, you understand how you've been going in training. So the numbers are very familiar to you. So your job is to focus on the execution, whereas the other people who haven't got that information, their job is trying to get through the event without blowing up. And they're just basically guessing at best to see what the outcome's going to be, whereas you've got a really clear understanding of what time you're going to do on the bike according to the training you've done and what time you can run according to all the data you've tested. So you actually have a clear understanding because you've been tested properly and you understand how to implement that into your training and racing, and the outcome will be a lot more guaranteed than the person who has none of this information.
That's great. So to finish this off, it should be a no-brainer, especially to us, as to why data is so important and why you need to learn how to test yourself. And this guide was about showing you exactly how it all works, the steps involved in the entire process, and giving you that understanding from the absolute base level of why this is so important. And this is why we announced our VIP Coaching Day, and this is why we wanted to create this for anyone out there who didn't know how this works and want to get personal help. Again, this is for anyone, whether you're a beginner athlete who's brand new to this or an advanced athlete that hasn't utilized the power of this properly. So a reminder of how the VIP Coaching Day will work. Basically, you turn up and session one will be all about the arrival, setting things up, an introduction to get you going and setting up your bike and your power meter correctly for the day. Introduction with Coach Gerard. The second session will be the actual bike testing, and this is where we do the test with Coach Gerard looking over your shoulder and coaching you every step of the way for the best chance of maximum success. Then we have a bit of recovery and a breakdown session, debriefing your performance before we go into session 3, which is the run testing. And again, this is done off the bike to get the most accurate measurements for the day in terms of run performance, which is going to be most similar to how you run on race day. Then we have a bit of a break again. And the last session is the actual coaching workshop and review with Gerard, where we teach you in the workshop how you can now use your data in training and on race day for yourself. The power numbers simplified, so setting up your Garmin or your watch in the simplest mode possible and showing you what numbers you should be looking at during your workouts and races. Program analysis and creation part of the workshop, which is using these numbers to create highly effective training sessions that you can immediately go home and start using straight away. And really importantly, understanding zones. So what percentages mean what zones and how much time to spend in each zone throughout your training week. So again, if this is something that you would like to do, you can go to TriVeloCoachingDay.com. We're really excited about this day. Again, it's held in Belgrave, Victoria. So either you're in Victoria or you're prepared to travel. The first date of this is Sunday, August the 1st, 2021. And obviously there are some things up in the air with COVID all the time. And if for some reason the date needs to be changed, that's fine. But for now, the first official date is Sunday, August 1st. And we only have 4 spots available due to the nature of the ability to test in this studio and where we are at our home. So generally, a power meter is non-negotiable. You could come without it, but we would just ask you the question, like we said in the episode, what are you going to do after? If you come and test with us, but you don't plan on having a power meter at home, then the testing is kind of rendered useless. So yeah, we would strongly encourage you to get a power meter if you're going to come to the day. And once again, it doesn't matter what level you are. This will benefit you if you're an absolute beginner triathlete who's brand new to all of this, or if you're an experienced triathlete who wants to get to another level. And that's it from us. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Dad, any parting words about this day that you're excited about? We're really excited when we came up with it and decided that this is something we really want to help people with.
Yeah, it's something that I've talked about for years, and so much easier for me to really have someone hands-on where I can, take my time and go through stuff that seems to be, too advanced for most people to really get a good concept of what's actually happening in their training and racing. And this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions and learn how to implement everything about what should be happening in data into your everyday training and racing.
Once again, go to TriVeloCoachingDay.com. Only 4 spots available. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. We're super hyped about this. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have more questions on this, we're happy to answer them in future podcast episodes. Thanks very much for listening. As always, see you next time.